What we're trying to do in this new revolution that we're in is to try and help ourselves understand that people with disability share the same humanity we do and should have the same hopes and dreams everybody else has. And therefore, we cannot be shaping, I'll talk a bit more about this tomorrow, shaping what we're doing for people based on some kind of crap version of service land for people. You know, where people get shoved into complicated places, where people are living and working and breathing with the same people day and night. And there is nothing in that plan, nothing in that way of providing service that has anything in a theoretical base that says that is the best and proper place for people to be. So let's just get very clear about that now, that many, many people are exhibiting very complex behaviours because their life is unbearable. And I think this is one of the first things we all need to get and understand. And it's very challenging for us, you know, when we're trying to understand this more. Now, this theory I'm talking to you about comes from two people called Gary Lavinia and Tom Willis, who are from the Institute for Applied Behavioural Analysis in LA. And they used to come to Australia and do, you know, theory training and then longitudinal training for people to learn more about it. And I was one of the first people who wasn't a psychologist to do that training. So it's the things I'm telling you are from a very strong theoretical base. And the idea is, what we need to do is to be proactively working with the person, supporting them in every way we can to help them avoid that behaviour at all costs. When the person does exhibit that behaviour, when they are communicating using their behaviour, we need to know how to manage it. But what we really should be doing is trying to work out, what is this person trying to tell me? What can I do to adjust what I'm doing to help this person not have to be in the behavioural shout, as opposed to another way of asking for what is needed. So just going back to that idea of that beautiful form and symmetry, the behaviour is not chaotic, it has meaning. And if you do not understand that, you do not appreciate that, what's going on for people, you're in a very, very poor place and you will not have the solution that you're looking for. So now what I would like you to do is to all stand up, please, and turn around twice. Okay, stop, stop! Nobody's to fall down. Wasn't that interesting that no one asked me why? But what's really interesting is that that's the life of people with disability. When people come and go, come and go, come and go. Many people with severe communication impairment can't go yes but. And they may have, any person may have 3, 4, 5 people in any given week with different people with different ideas about what you'll be doing, how you'll be doing it, when you'll be doing it. And by the way, very rarely will people tell you why you won't be doing it. So can you imagine a life, just start with that before we go any further, a life where you have many people coming and going and they're all giving you a different idea about your life. Oh, and by the way, they think that they control you. So parents don't control people with disability. Service providers don't control people with disability. And workers must strongly get into an understanding that your job is not to control the person. Your job is to work alongside that person to assist him or her to have the best opportunity in every single day. And to be watching proactively for what's going on so that you can help that person stop engaging that behaviour and find a different way to get the need met. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So how will we do this? Because, by the way, there's nothing about punishment in this theoretical form. There's absolutely nothing about punishing people for communicating. And if you want to read much more about this, Gary Lavinia and Ann Donald wrote an amazing book called Progress Without Punishment, I think it's called. It's got a few titles. Back 35 years ago, it's got the whole structure in it about why we shouldn't be punishing people and why we should be really actively working on helping people do better in their lives. So the first thing, I think Kasdan said, by the way, in 1975, that the reason we engage in punishment is because we don't know what else to do. Do you think that's true? I think it is true a lot, that often we don't know what else to do. You know, I come from a generation where my mother had the iron cord or the jug cord. You young people, you won't even know this was a truth, but once the jug had a cord in it, you could pull the cord out and you could flash your child around with that for a little while. It never hurt me, but I think there are other people who got very damaged. I went to a little working class Catholic school where you got the cuts. So you've got the ruler on the edge, on your knuckles, around your legs, or the cane, a lawyer cane. I don't know that it harmed me. I think it did harm a lot of other people. And what you need to know about punishment is you can get rapid suppression of a behaviour by punishing people. You know, by yelling at people, by hitting people, by secluding people, you can get people to stop. But yeah, the most wonderful thing about human beings, all of us, including people with disability, is we are highly adaptable. So after you start hitting people, yelling at people, or nagging at people, they'll just learn how to manage the level you're doing, and you have to up the ante. And I'm so glad I'm in Canberra, because I always like to tell a story against my sister, and if she knew this, she would just kill me. And it's on film now. When her children were small, she's a nagger. You know, talk. And it's always about, if you don't do that, you won't go to soccer training on Saturday morning. And Jackie, her son and I would look at each other going, we knew who was really invested in soccer training on Saturday morning. He'd be going. Oh yes, he would. So it's all this kind of, it'll happen, you won't get it, but nothing really happening. So can I say to you, if you do nothing else about what you're doing in your relationships with everybody, get some straight lines around what it is that you're expecting of people. Get much clearer about what you're asking of people. Because sometimes I see in many, many people with significant disability with big behavioural challenges, one of the saddest things that happened was people kind of just got into a weird idea that the person wouldn't understand, and therefore never ever placed any demands on that person. You see that in school, you see that in service land, and you see that with many parents. So can I say to you, don't get mixed up between people with severe communication impairment, and if you're very smart, don't ever even play in the world of intellectual disability, because we don't even know what we're talking about when we say that. If the person can't speak, the most accurate thing you can say about that person is they have severe communication impairment. But you may or may not know that the part in your brain where you speak is not the part in the brain where you receive information. And so most people I've ever met actually do have very good receptive communication, even when they can't speak. And if you're putting your bets into IQ testing, the biggest bullshit idea in the entire world, forget it. Because IQ testing is not appropriate for the group of people we're here talking about today. And I hear people say, oh, he's got an IQ of 3 years, 4 months, 5 days, 25 minutes, 44 seconds, and 22 fucking nanoseconds. And I think to myself, how on earth would you ever know that? How could you possibly know that? Because the instruments that we're using are primitive and blunt. They're not appropriate for the people that we're working with. So let's get our minds out of the gutter, away from this idea of people having, kind of poor IQs, and get into the world where we're starting to see what people really can do, and raising our expectations of people. So that when we're working with people, we're working from a point of complete respect, and we're understanding a tremendous amount about who this person is and what really floats their boat. The other thing I need to say right away is, in service land, in Queensland, but I'm sure not in Canberra, we've got services who have this very strange idea that you can't have a relationship with the person you're working with. In fact, in aged care service land, when my mum was alive, and she was like Nellie Melba, having 55 iterations of dying and never going, the people who did her service said to the people there, even if you take a day off, you can't go to her funeral because you're not a friend. Now, have you ever heard such rubbish in your entire life?
Yeah.
How on earth would you ever work with somebody whose trust needs to be built, who needs to know that you've got their back? How on earth can you ever work with somebody if you don't form a relationship? You know, you need to really understand in services, if there's coordinators and managers of services in the room, and actually as families, we need to demand this. When you're going with your NDIA package to some service, I think we should be asking some certain questions, all the things that Margaret talked about today, but also things like, do you discourage people from forming a relationship with the person they're working with? In the service I've run for 25 years, we've managed to do that. Have people form good relationships. Every time now and again it gets messy. So we'll fall off the bike and get back on. But there is no way you can work with people with significant behavioural challenge if you don't form a trusting and good relationship. And you know what? You can have a good relationship but not build trust yet. So these are the things that we need to be actively engaged on that don't require any particular skill. Just to start thinking about how we're working with that person and how as a service and as a family what we're demanding of services and what services are actually providing. Now, when you're getting into the proactive model, the first thing I think that we should be demanding is that the person who's working with that person is an expert on that individual, not a disability expert. We don't need people who've gone and done Cert 3 or Cert 4 that will be as useful to you as Tits on a Bull. It's just not going to work. And you know, when you go to meet somebody, it's really interesting how people think, if you are the expert, how you're supposed to know everything about that person. So I've never promoted myself as an expert, just saying. I just go to help people work things out. And people will say to me, would you like to go out with him? Would you like to take me out the car now? And I go, no, under no circumstances, because I'm not an expert on this person. I don't know what upsets him or makes him frightened or gets him anxious. You're the people who know that, or should. So we won't be going anywhere with me just with this person, and you won't be doing anything to set him up to show me the behaviour. I'll believe you. We can just go on believing. I'll believe what you tell me, and we'll go on from here. So very, very important to think that way. So when we're getting into this proactive mode, the first thing you need to know is, what is the behavioural whisper? So when you're with this person, and they're, you turn up at work, or you wake up in the morning to your son or daughter, what's the thing that tells you that today is not a great day for this person? Now there might be all sorts of things. It might be little ticky Tourette's kind of noises. It might be complex kind of little things that go on. It might be that the person's not got a grumpy look on their face, and not a grumpy look on their face. It might be a range of things that you might know about and understand. And when you see the behavioural whispers, what you do then is adjust your behaviour. Because what you want to do is help this person not have to engage in that difficult behaviour today. You want to help them find a different way to be today. And so at the behavioural whisper, we're already thinking, better adjust things today. And in a good behaviour plan, you'll have things to do to guide you, to tell you what you will do today to calm this person down. Then you get to the behavioural murmur. This is where things get elevated a bit more. And at the end of the behavioural murmur, we're pretty close to the behavioural shout. This is the point at which most people start to act around the person with disability. And by this stage, you've missed the boat. So many, many people get hurt when they work with people with very significant challenges because they don't, they don't start their positive support at the behavioural whisper. They're really at the end of the behavioural murmur, ready to have the huge outburst, and suddenly people are walking in between them saying, stop, stop. Or those other wonderful support systems like, why are you doing this? Stop this now. I don't fucking know why I'm doing it. I'm just engaging in this now because I've got to this point. Sorry, the other thing is I've got coprolalia. It's a problem. When I get really, really passionate, I swear. It's a condition I can't control. I still get the most out of that, I can't help it. As soon as I'm really into it, it happens. So if anyone's offended, leave. And I'll try
diagnose me.
I diagnose myself, which is what I do with most things I have wrong with me. Therefore, I'm 62 with no medication of any kind. I could be dead any minute, but I'm not taking medication. So I like to diagnose myself on everything, and I find that's the best way. Okay, so when you're in the behavioural whisper, the person is here, and they're going, hey, I think I need a hand. And in the old days of support workers, everyone would be out the back having a fag, coffee, and chat about what happened yesterday, that kind of thing that happens. And then the person's in the behavioural murmur, hey, I really, really am needing a hand. I really, really am needing a hand. And then we go, bang. And everyone goes, oh, where'd that come from? Because people aren't paying attention. So if you don't do anything else or take anything else away from this thing today, understand what the behavioural whispers are and practice mindfulness while at work. Because if you haven't quite got yet that you're working with a really complex person, that's something you better get pretty quickly. This is not where you can just wander in and wander out and spend a few hours with a person and, go down and have a coffee somewhere and walk around the park and not really need to be conscious in any way.
We're trying to tell you for the last 6 or 7 minutes.
What was that?
Well, we're trying to tell you for the last
That's
6 or
right.
7 minutes.
That's exactly it. And it's our responsibility to know what this person is telling us. Because, we put a lot of faith in verbal communication, don't we? If only this person could tell us what was wrong. Anyone married to a person who's inept in that way? What's wrong? Nothing? There's nothing wrong. Lots of people do not tell us. Lots of people don't know what's wrong. They just feel. Well, people with disability are going to be the same. So our responsibility is to be able to look at the whole of that person and see what's going on and understand a little bit more just from that particular kind of approach. The other thing is, I'm going to put the glasses on now, which is very bad because they're very stylish, but they're very magnified. I think I've got the wrong script. So maybe a bit dizzy. Yes, got all that done. The other thing you need to understand is setting events. These are things that you are totally out of your control. But if you know that they're there, it can help you start to understand why things that are happening. So say you were coming today, you didn't want to come, your husband made you come, your wife made you come, the service made you come over here. You didn't want to be here, you weren't sure what was going to happen, you were worried if there was going to be a test at the end of this workshop, and there is, by the way. And you don't like sitting down all day, and you've got a bad back, and actually you've got 15 million things you could be doing if you went to work, or, you know, it's a beautiful day in Canberra to be out doing something lovely. But you think, I'll make the most of it. So you set the alarm, you get some really comfortable clothes that you like to wear and you feel stylish in. So, you ask your partner to fill the car so because you know it's a bit empty. You're going to get in early enough to get yourself a coffee at your favourite coffee shop on your way through. But you have a very bad night and you wake up late through the alarm. You go to get your clothes and realise there's a ginormous stain on the front means you cannot wear it. It's not one of those things you can say happen on the bus. And then you get out, so it's too late for the coffee, and you get in the car and that work did not fill up. So now you've got to go and get petrol, so now you're late. And you get here today and your boss is out there waiting for you, really a bit unhappy, but not, not over the top. And he or she says to you, you're late, and you've been late to everything that we've had on in the last 6 months. Not an unreasonable thing for your boss to say, right? You go, and the boss says, how'd that happen? Wasn't that unreasonable? Well, all the setting events contributed to that outburst. And sometimes you'll know what those setting events have been, and sometimes you won't. So it's very good to understand a little bit about what's been going on in the life of this person for longer than just the 5 minutes before you turned up today. And when we know these things, we can start to adjust or see what we can do to change those things for the next time, if that makes sense. We need to know what the triggers are. We need to understand what it is that sets this person off. Now, about 1 million years ago, when I first got into disability, I was working in probably the first service in the world where we were recruiting people one-on-one for the person, and we were asking the family to make decisions, self-directed service, make the decisions about whether this person would work with their son or daughter, and then we watch people's behaviour and levels of happiness over a period of time to make sure the person was happy with that individual. So effectively, families and the person with disability were hiring and firing their own workers. And one of the people in this service was a guy called Gary, who had been home with his mum from 18 to 21, and he was a very active kind of man, and he was very keen to go out. So every day he'd dream up a new thing to do, and his mum had a very unfortunate voice. So he'd go shopping or driving or whatever in his own way, and she'd go, "No, Gary, we can't go out." So no became the trigger. And when he moved into his own place, if you said no, he would hit you. Now, can I say to you, if you're in this work and you're in a bit of self-harm, you're in the wrong spot, because you will unconsciously get people hitting you a lot. If you're one of those people who gets a lot of, kind of biting and hitting with the person you're working with or your family member, you need to look at what you're doing. Can I just say that to you as directly as that? Because actually, even when people are very, very aggressive and violent, there are some people will hit, some people that not. There is a certain element for people who won't hit a very big, tall, man. But I've known women who were tiny, small-framed, who went out with people every day, people who were known for their violence and aggression, who did never ever get hurt. So there's something about what we do that creates this aggression. Not taking the responsibility off the person to stop, but actually something we do that can set that up. I've got a situation at the moment with one little boy who's got a worker who's supposed to be the most experienced worker, and he is always biting her. And the parents kind of get really upset with me because they love her, because she's so tolerant. And I'm like, what's going on here? This is wrong. In all these years I've worked with all these people who are considered to be very violent and aggressive, and I've never had a single person hurt me. I wonder why that would be. Because actually, internally, when I meet that person, it's like, hi, I'm Anne. And you know what? I'm here to actually do everything I can to help you, but do not under any circumstances hurt me. And I will set myself up to make sure you can't. All those things you do. You don't go right into people when they're very aggressive. We all know this. We know this from every other part of our lives. So being careful. You'll know now that not only do I have copulating, but I've got a butterfly brain, and I've just got back to the story. So there's Gary, he's allergic to no, he's in his own place now. So the edict to all the workers was, you are never ever to say no to Gary. Now he wasn't allergic to you saying he couldn't do it, he was just allergic to the word no, that was the trigger. So you could say, oh Gaz, it's 2:45 and someone else is coming at 3 o'clock. How about we ask him if you go then? Or I'm just cooking dinner and we go after that. Or, you know, amazingly, oh my God, in the one-to-one support, you could say, sure, let's go. Satiate him with doing the things he wants and asks you to do. Very counterintuitive. This was enough to make psychologists in my big longitudinal training with Gary and Tom to roll over. They just took 3 hours to get through this bit of where they're proactively working with people, delivering what people want and need. This is actually a good thing for people, not a bad thing. So after 6 months of no one saying the word no, people actively trying to find ways to get Gary to the things he was thinking up and liking to do, magically, no is no longer a trigger. So when we're working with people, if a person's come from a life with no support, and then they get quite a significant amount of support, maybe through the NDIA or whatever, in a year, if that person hasn't reduced some of those behaviours, we'll have to ask ourselves what's going on. And it won't be, oh, this is all about the person just being one of those basically bad people, or they're, you know, not able to really manage themselves. It'll be, what is everyone else doing to change what's going on here? And let me tell you that this has worked over and over and over again. This is not some fairy tale. Does that make sense to you? If you think about the amount of support we give to people, how is it that people still need to engage in challenging huge behaviours as a way to manage their lives if we are actively listening and delivering what people need in a not consecutive, what do you call it? Consistent way. Okay. Now I know that there will be people who just are desperate to get up here and smack you in the mouth, and other people who want to ask a question, but I don't have time for that till the end, and we're going to have a bit at the end where we will ask some questions. So just write them down if you want to make a comment or disagree. The other thing around behaviour is that much of it, as well as the need to gain back some control, much of the behaviour is around, for some people, is anxiety, and then often people will have an outburst as catharsis, as a way to disperse that pent-up feeling. And that is for a lot of people. And so if we know that what the person may be doing is building up and then having that big outburst as a wonderfully adaptive way to manage their own emotions and feelings, what we need to do is find a way to manage that anxiety and pent-up feeling in a way that's positive rather than in that negative way. Do you understand what I'm saying when I say that? There's a build-up. The person's learned that actually makes them feel like they've settled it. But we can do other things too, which I'm hoping I'll have some time to talk to you about in a minute. And the other is that we are all as human beings wired up for a big old time. So psychologists have done tests on rats and extrapolated that to us to say that when they did experiments on rats, they had a box of food and drink, a box of electric shocks, and a box with nothing. And of course, rats, like human beings, went to the food and drink box immediately. When they took the food and drink box away, and there was only the electric shocks and the vacuum of nothing, guess where the rats went? Electric shocks. So we know that we're all, as human beings, wired up for a big old time. We know that. For many people, they've learned that a bad big old time is the only kind of big time they get. And so for a lot of people I work with, we struggle to try and find the fabulous opportunity for them to be in the big moment, to be wired up for that big time, but not necessarily to be doing a negative thing, you know, to be doing a positive thing. So this is actually one of the strategies you can use, is start to try and work out how you can get kudos, acknowledgement, notice for this person in a different way to actually having to engage in that big behaviour. The other thing you can do is actually reinforce times when the person is doing very well. So I always like to use the example of a mum with 3 children. One of them has to go off to the special school in the morning, the bus is coming, everyone's going to be ready by 8 o'clock and out the door, and for whatever reason, she can't get all that stuff ready the night before, she can't, you know, whatever it is, it's not happening. And so every morning there's screams, there's crying, there's all the stuff that goes on in families all around Australia. But in the afternoon when those children come home, she and they are calmer. And so at that particular moment, you can actually practice a lot of building expectation of the person to do what you need them to do, and to give an active kind of positive engagement with that child or those children. So they come home, you say to them, put your bag away, I'm making pikelets, come and help me, and then we're going to have a little picnic outside and have some pikelets and cordial, and sit down and say, how's your day? Now the moment you start to engage in actively rewarding children or anyone else for a time when they're not doing whatever they're doing, you are starting to build a different kind of rationale for how you're going to work with that person. Because you know, in Australia, we're not very good, are we, at recognising when people do the right thing? We're really good when people do the wrong thing. And I watch this all the time with the people we actively support at Community Connection, where people are going through their day, and for maybe, I don't know, 22 and a half hours out of 24, this person is operating really well, and for another day, part of that day, whatever the rest is, they're engaged in some big behaviour. And the amount of effort, energy and focus on that needed behaviour compared to no focus at all on all the hours when this person is actively doing okay, it's downright remarkable. And actually, a lot of what happens for people and why people build their behaviours the way they do is because we actively reward people for behaving fully. Now, this doesn't take people with disability off the hook. Remember I said before about the need for the rules? Everybody needs to understand what the rules of our society are. And people need to learn how to manage those rules. And we have to really help people do better with that. And the people I see in my own service, I've neglected to mention, I have a son who's now 34, I've been working in this way since he was a little boy. He's now a person who has to manage epilepsy that's uncontrolled, very profound autism and Tourette's. And he is able to move through his community, actively be part of his community, engage with people positively, and never have an outburst as a result of these principles. So people can actually do better, but we have to get better at that. So when I'm in the shops with Belle, where for a long time this was a very hard thing for him to do, to go out to the shops, and he's coping very well, and I'm walking behind him saying, hey, you know what, you're doing great. Often I see these things happen for people and no one actually says, look at that, you just managed it. We're very big on reacting, we're not that good at responding to the positive. So find a teachable moment, this is an example. Paul is a man who's acquired brain injury. He's quite a difficult character, but I think he might have been a pretty awful person before he had his acquired brain injury, so he's just continuing on in that way. Anyway, he is the Nazi for people parking in parking spots allocated for people with disability. So when he goes to the local shopping centre in his van, and he sees somebody parking there, and he sees they haven't got some kind of card or whatever, he will go up and stalk them to find them to say, you're in the wrong spot. And often he's just outstandingly wrong. He also believes that no one else but he or other people with disabilities should use the disabled toilet. And I say to him, well, you're incontinent and I'm incontinent, and I'm going to wet myself if I don't go too. So I probably will give you the toilet first, but I don't have to. It's just there so you've got one that you can use. It's not yours, it doesn't have your name on it, but he's got these ideas. So he goes to Castletown, he sees this guy get out of his car, park in the spot, run upstairs without doing anything else, and he's getting out of his van and he's ready to have the go. And the worker says to him, you know what, let's just wait and see what happens next. And sure enough, down the travelator comes this man with his little old mum in her wheelchair, and brings her to the car and gets her in. She says, see, sometimes you can't tell. Oh yeah, he says. Next week they're there again. He sees someone else do that, and he's about to have a go, and she says, but remember what happened last week? And he goes, oh yes. So one of my mentors is a guy called William Glasser, and he says that when we're trying to help people change their behaviour, giving people information is one of the ways that we can help people change. By the way, he also says you can never change other people's behaviour, only your own. So when you want to change something in other people, you have to adjust something in yourself, and often that will be enough to help the other person change. Very powerful stuff. Tony Robbins says, that now frightening public speaker who used to be a motivational speaker and now looks like something from a New Age church, as he says the word F, I think he's got popularity too, every sentence. But one of his amazing wisdoms was, human beings will never change their behaviour until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of them changing. That's very powerful, isn't it? About how we are as human beings. So we shouldn't be thinking that people with disability are going to be any different to us, because they're just human beings like us. And so we need to understand These things are true for all of us. The other thing that's good to know is the topography or cycle of the behaviour. When you're working with people who have very big outbursts, you need to know the beginning, the behavioural whisper. You need to know the point at which you can't intervene anymore. You need to step away and wait. And then you need to know the point at which you can go back close to that person. Now for some people, that can be like 3 hours or even the next day, where you need to be very mindful and careful because you don't know when it's going to kind of come up, the behaviour is going to come up again. There are other people who, as soon as they've engaged in whatever aggressive thing they're doing, once that's done, it's safe to go back close again. And we have an example with that guy I was telling you about before who's got the impulse control, where he can be in the middle of the biggest outburst, and then he'll bite himself and be bleeding. And then his worker can say in a calm way, look, you've hurt yourself, do you want me to help you? He can stop the behaviour. Then he can go and wash it and put ointment on it, and then step back and he'll continue. And we don't quite know all of what that means. It seems like it's quite deliberate, but that would be, my idea is every time you come to an intuitive idea about what's the issue here, discard that and start thinking about the next thing that's really out there, because it probably won't be the most obvious thing you think of. People say, oh, he's doing that to get at me. He's doing that because he doesn't like me. He's doing that to get attention. The things everyone says. If you're in a one-to-one relationship with a person and you're charged with the support to that person today, if you think that you're not giving that person enough attention, what do you think you could do about that? Thank you. Of course you could. You know what? I need a tremendous amount of attention. I'm an extrovert. I go to a job every day. I get a lot of kudos. And I come here and I do this, and all the people are looking at me. You know what? No one, well, people do think I'm a bit aberrant, but mainly people think it's okay. So it's funny. Yeah, I know quite a few more than me, but I'm not saying. So there's a lot, there's a lot of people who need a lot of attention. It doesn't mean that that person is kind of wrong. They just need more attention. If we stop being so judgmental and start to just see what the issue was and work on that, we're in a much better spot than if we're trying to do something from a judgmental point of view about this individual. If you don't like the person that you're working with, do not be with them. I didn't mention at the beginning that Community Connection is a service in town that's been going as long as Janet's service has been in Canada. We have always worked on the idea that workers need to be handpicked and it's bespoke. So they're all tailored to the work, the person that they're supporting. No pooling workers come and go, no contract workers ever come and go. For any person in this 50 people we have in our service. Each service has its own little culture and whatever, and people are building up expertise on that person. And when that happens, it is magical how much behaviour settles. Might take a little while, might take a year or so, but funnily enough, things start to settle as a result of having this, not this thing about people coming and going, we don't know the person. I don't know about you, but could you imagine that? Having someone come in every day and doing personal care, and by the way, they're coming to do you, not work with you. Could you imagine how that would feel? How much that might build your behaviour, just that alone. So understanding the nature of how we provide support to people, and kind of starting to come to some glimmer of why it is that people might continue to engage in deep behaviours. So a lot of it is stuff that could be altered very quickly. And when we do that stuff, when we look at a person's good life, we make sure they're contributing, they're out and about having a nice life, they've got a safe place to live where they feel safe and life is good, when there's relationships around that person. After that, we might look at a behaviour plan. But before we actually pay attention to the life needs of that individual, I am never going to be doing a plan that tames a person into a life that they never wanted. And can you see the reasonableness of that? Why that would not is not a good idea to be doing those sorts of things. By the way, just going back to the thing about understanding the nature of the behaviour and what you can do to adjust it. There's nothing about even going into behaviour. I'll tell you a story from my own life. So I've got 3 children. My eldest, Jane, is 42. She's got a lot of things. She's getting married next year. She's got a partner. She's been 5 years a volunteer at the hospital. She is just close now to getting a job again after some years without. And she also had step-down syndrome, profoundly deaf, hypothyroid, all those sorts of things. So I had that child, and then a child without allegedly a disability, although I used to say she was hormonally challenged. We're out of that now. And then the last of my children, Val, has this profound form of epilepsy, Tourette's, and autism. So you can imagine Sally, as the middle child, had a bit of a rough trot. And she was very competent, very smart at school, everything was going well for her. Janie actually got ignored, but she was pretty happy to be ignored. She's deeply introverted. She quite likes to just hang out in her own company anyway. And then Val took all the oxygen in our family for a really long time. So one day, I started getting these calls from school to say that Sally's got asthma. And I run to school and I get her and bring her home, and she's gasping and all this stuff is going on. I think I even got her a puffer at one point. And then it was a really bad attack, and the paramedics were called, and I was going to school, and I happened to be there. And the paramedic pulled me over and he said, "It's not the lungs, it's not asthma." And suddenly I realised that she was actually calling out for attention. She needed some personal time, she needed some personal consideration. So once a week, without exemption, no matter what was going on a Wednesday, I picked her up from school, and we went to McDonald's for the time it took between school finishing and when we had to be home for Val.
It was psychosomatic.
She was behaving
Yeah.
to get what she couldn't get from me any other way. So she had to get to the behavioural shout before I was paying attention to what she needed. So immediately we started that thing about going every Wednesday afternoon for that little time together. Immediately all the asthma went away. How about that for others? So sometimes it's best not to pay attention to the thing that's happening and put your time and attention somewhere else with that individual so that you can help him or her get what they need. So the communicative function of her behaviour was, "Mum, I need more of your time and attention." And so if I gave her that, she didn't have to engage in that behaviour. Well, that's the same symmetry, form and beauty that all the people with disability we're working with are engaged in. They're doing the same thing, not always for attention. So you need to know what the person is trying to tell you, and then you need to meet that need in a different way. That, by the way, sounds simple. That is a very complex thing. Sometimes you need a bit of data, you need to understand what's gone on before and after, you need to do a lot of things. And now I want to talk to you about this complexity and how hard it is sometimes to work out how to help people. We have this woman, she's 60 this year. She has a lifetime of being very powerful in her response to people. She's used aggression on other people, on her family. She had a loving and very committed family, but they weren't good at listening. So when she stood on the steps and refused to go in the car to the program her mother had created, this is my dearest friend, created, which was a group, this is 30 years ago, a group program, and she yelled and screamed, she still had to go. And although people knew she didn't like it, no one really thought that behaviour was about her saying, "Mum, I don't want to go." It was like, "You have to go, it's the only rest I get." Fair enough. Anyway, when she was living at home with her mum and dad, she moved downstairs as a first step to moving out. And her mum was so protective of her, she moved downstairs too, because she was sure that she wouldn't be able to pull the doona up over herself. Because she'd been so cared for, she didn't have to do a single thing for herself. That, by the way, is the road to perdition. People do have movement differences. If we have time, I'll talk about that, but nevertheless. So when she's down there on her time alone, they would put on Pavarotti, a DVD, and she would listen to Pavarotti for the whole of the concert. And throughout that concert, she would scream, really scream. And they had very good neighbours who understood what they were, what was happening, and very supportive, so they never complained. Then, after I suggested that maybe she could move out, and really got stoned for my, thought about this, not long after, the workers who also were stoning me, very committed to her, and her mum and dad agreed, yes, she could. So we got the OT from housing to come over. She said, it'll probably take, a couple of years for this to happen. Daisy sits back in the seat and just go, thank God. And two weeks later, we had the perfect place. Everything that Daisy said she wanted for Ellie was all there. So she moves in. And about a month later, she starts attacking people in the car on the way home. And people immediately start to label this coming home behaviour, which, can I say, is the thing that stirks me the most in the world. When people label a behaviour as though they know what it means just because they think they know what it means. Be very careful about this. When I tell you this story, you're going to understand why. So that went on for a long, long time, and I kept saying, I don't understand this because she doesn't get a bag and run out the door, she loves her own company, she's happy to be home, all these things are going on. But it was always coming home, so people kind of thought that's what it was. Then, like years later, I find out that Ellie doesn't listen to Pavarotti anymore. They stopped that when she moved into the unit because she's now in close proximity to other people. And they don't want to, quite rightly, they don't want people to be disturbed or to draw attention to her in the housing units. I think what used to happen was the way she catharted, the way she eased up all that tension she had in her body from anxiety and frustration and rage, she used to get out by listening to Pavarotti and screaming. And when that was taken away, she found another place to do that. When she's strapped in the car seat she can't get out of, she found another way to do that on her way home. And so that says to me that actually the intent of that behaviour is, don't worry about me, I'm just getting rid of all my pent up blah. And then we take that away, and so she has to put it over here and say, okay, well I can't do what I used to do, so now I have to do something that's more dangerous and more worrying. And actually the antidote to that is to help her disperse that anxiety by making sure she's more in her own life, that she's got more chances to manage her anxiety, that she's got more power and control over what's happening in her life every day, which is what we've been doing. And so that woman who, when I first met her 30 years ago, engaged in those behaviours all the time, is now the calmest woman. It's amazing. I don't know the last time she had any kind of outburst whatsoever. For her birthday in September, she's going to a fancy apartment on the Strand. She's going to have a big birthday bash. There's food coming in. There's a special dairy-free, vegan, gluten-free, life-free cake being made, and the whole thing's happening. And the way we've worked on that with her is to start being very counterintuitive in how we see her behaviour, by adjusting her diet to accommodate her gut issues, to work on her evacuation of her bowel, because, by the way, do you know that many, many people end up having poor behaviour because they've got terrible gut health and constipation. And when we do have these gut issues, people will not be behaving or managing well. So the management of the gut is one of the most basic things we need to do for people. And almost every person with autism will either have parasites, reflux, constipation, obstruction, some kind of bowel obstruction. So when we ask people, I'm known as the Queen of Poo, Debbie at work is the Princess of Pee. We spend a lot of our life talking about poo. Pete Evans says, for your own information, that your poo should be like a nice log, quite long, with 2 pointy bits on it. So if you haven't got that kind of poo, your gut's not right, and you need to be working on it. And the people we work with, we need to pay attention to what's going on for them in their gastrointestinal tract, because if that's not working, you can do all the behavioural management in the world, and the person will not be able to cope easily. They'll do better, but there's real things happening here that will physiologically affect the person. Does that make sense? Okay. What else do I want to tell you? I've got other things here. I do have a PowerPoint for this, but you know what? I just did not have the time to adjust it down to like a 3/4 of an hour approach. So, how much time we got now?
About 10 minutes.
We're supposed to stop for questions.
It's 12:30.
Just start at 12:30.
Okay, just quickly. So if communication is part of what's going on, so if you want to try and help people with their communication and they're not able to do that readily, even if they do have verbal communication or if people have severe communication improvement, there are things that you can do that will help you and other people understand and legitimise people's communication. So one of these things is, these are all low-tech things, because I used to get people $16,000 light riders to communicate on, and their workers and families would come with them without them recharged. People are probably a bit better at that these days because we're also into recharging everything, but that turned it into the equivalent of a QWERTY keyboard, $15,000 worth of equipment. So before we ever get to that big equipment, you can do these things. You get just a dictionary up, which says, when this person does this, it means that. You are required to do this. When Ellie puts her fingers in her mouth, this is the beginning of a perfect cycle of behaviour. She is the person with the perfect cycle. When Ellie puts her fingers in her mouth, this means that she's building anxiety, and this is a behavioural whisper to her outburst. You are required to identify for her that it looks like she's building anxiety, offer her a cup of tea, gently encourage her to take her fingers out of her mouth. Because, by the way, she can't get that party started if she doesn't start with that. How about that? She cannot get that behaviour to the next stage because it's a perfect cycle. So we don't ignore her. We don't go, get your fingers out so we don't want you to attack me. We have to then work out how we will help her not build that anxiety and calm down. Okay, so the gesture dictionary has all sorts of things. You know how some people, you're going to be a new person, and the people go, oh, she's saying yes, and you're thinking, I didn't see that. So sometimes we can have a gesture dictionary that could be, years ago before I was very high tech, I did a PowerPoint gesture dictionary with every gesture, the description of a photograph of that gesture, the gesture described and what it meant. And that was a part of the induction process for new people working. But whatever you do with these things, there's no point to them if they just sit in a cupboard and no one reads them. So after you've written it all down, you need people to know it and act on it. The other is to have photo rosters. So in all of my communication training, I was taught, no matter when you put up, say, a photo of somebody, you always put the person's name. Any board maker little tool you're using, you always write the words up top. I believe people have already got that literacy, but can't show it. That's how I've been trained. But if you don't believe in that, what we're doing is teaching people to be more literate. So a roster is only going to be as powerful as how current you keep it. So if there's a roster and everybody knows when they're coming to work and when parents are going to be there and what's going to happen, that's great. But if there's a change, the person has to be part of changing that roster. And by the way, you do have to change the roster because the person has to be able to rely on it. I once went to a place up at the table and to do some work. It was the Activity Therapy Training Centre. And they had this thing on the thing about so-and-so's coming on at 12 o'clock. But I didn't meet those people. I'm like, oh, who are those people? They were, oh, they've been here for 2 years. Do you wonder why people get up and clock us? Like, really? It's just unbelievable, the things that people have to put up with. Yes, I'm not going to go into that. I just want to say this. In terms of finding the right people to work with people is a significant challenge, but in fact, with every person with disability who turns out to be a powerless person, if you aren't able to share the control and help that person manage their own behaviour and their own selves. We need people who are non-judgmental, who know how to adjust their voice so that they don't show judgment in their voice. We need to get our voices to go down when people's go up. We need to know that anxiety can't live when people are shallow breathing. And so if the person can breathe deeper, we help that person to breathe deeper. If they can't do it, you do it. And when you start to breathe deeply, it will make a tremendous difference. So I'm just going to show you how this works. You're about to have this big outburst. And I come over and go, it's okay, sweet. It's okay. Everything's all right now. Everyone's out of the room. I'm going to leave the room too. Just wait there. Everything's okay. Can you feel how the room's gone calmer? I wasn't really shouting before, but you know what I mean. Or if you can't breathe and I start breathing, you can do a state change in the other person and in yourself, so that you're not actually aquaplaning up on the behaviour or getting anxious or worried about what's going on. Deep breathing, the moment you breathe deeply, you are reducing anxiety. If you listen to your voice and it's up really high, it's because you're anxious. Get it down. Bring it down, because when you're doing these things, that contributes to the behaviour of the person you're supporting. And your role is to help this person manage these things on a minute-by-minute basis. Now there's about 2,766,000 other things about this that I should be telling you. All I need to say to you is you don't need to be diagnosing what the communicative function of the behaviour is. You need to be able to be good observers and understand what you can do that's very low-tech that can make a tremendous difference to how this person's operating. That's the message you have to take away, really. And if people come to ask you to do data, they are not asking you to do this because they want to waste your time. They want to understand more about the connections between certain aspects of what's going on every day and how this person is managing. And if you get good data, that can make a tremendous difference and can really contribute to whether we understand more about the communicative function of that person's behaviour. Now, I think we can go to questions for the last probably 7 minutes now. Any questions? Yes?
What if the behaviour you're trying to stop is something that that person enjoys doing?
How do you know that? How do you know
Because
the
they get
person's
instant gratification, instant relief from it.
Oh, well, by dint of behaviour, people are getting rewarded for their behaviour. They're already getting something that says, this works for me. The whole of what I'm saying is how you actually find a different way to get that gratification for that person. So while the person's engaging in the behaviour, you stay neutral, you don't get into the behaviour with the person, you have a proper reactive strategy so that you don't build that behaviour in any way. But over here, you're working on all these things to get that, if it's catharsis, like I said, or if it's actually to get some time or attention, or...
I can tell you exactly what it is.
What is it?
You laugh. My 7-year-old, he has ASD,
Yep,
and he loves to pick his nose and pick his ears and loves to eat it.
yep. I'm pretty
And he
keen on
does it
that.
constantly.
And
he doesn't care who is watching.
Kids do it.
So change of setting, nothing changes that need. You know, he just loves doing it.
If you were working in a truly holistic manner around that, how you wanted to help him change that? My grandson, how old's your son?
7.
My grandsons are 4 and 9, nearly 10. Bathing is very important. And really, they just don't want to give up. And I say to them, see, I'm not sure what they're going to be. They might be gay, but I worry about saying this, but I say, girls really can't stand stinky boys. You know what? No girl's going to be interested in you if you're smelly when you go to school. And people remember smelly boys way after they leave school. And they look at me in absolute horror. So I don't know if it's because they're thinking, actually, I'm not going to be interested in girls, or whether it's because they really don't want girls to not like them. So, you know, when I said before, Glass's thing is you can't change other people's behaviour, you can only change your own. So the first thing would be, if you're putting a lot of time and attention into that, that may be also gratifying the person, point one. The second is to teach time and place. So apparently in Queensland, most people pick their noses up in their cars. People think they're invisible in their car. So big human beings with big fat fingers have got their fingers up their noses, picking their noses. So that's not a good time and place, right? The car is not good.
We tried that. We said, oh, you know, it's something you can do in private. So you do it, you know, when you go to the bathroom, someplace where other people
Lying on your bed with your feet up.
But the thing is, the impulse is so great that he needs that instant relief, the instant gratification.
Does he have a chewy toy?
That's
So
what I was
that-
Just
thinking.
move his hands
But
away.
it doesn't give him the same pleasure.
Well, you've got
So
to
we
work
can
out.
give him the fiddle toy, the chewy toy, the whatever else,
You need to have
and
a taste of it.
it's not as pleasurable.
Sometimes it's also practice for what you're replacing it into. Like, my older son has lots of trouble with anger and those sorts of things. And so, gosh, for years now, we've been doing things like making games around that. So when everybody's really fine and really, really happy, and his pressure is okay, then we'll practice behaviour. And we'll do the whole, you know, he loves the fact of when mum practices, you know, psycho mummy and all this sort of stuff. And then we use the replacement then. And so it might be, I was going to use his name, it might be with your little fella, like it might be doing some stuff beforehand and also putting just as much effort into what you're going to replace it with.
See, I think that actually the issue is, you're right, it's innately satisfying to pick your nose. Other people pick their bums, but we never actually think we would just let them keep doing that, would we? No, we wouldn't do it.
Yes.
So the fact of the matter is, this is not something that's going to get fixed in 5 minutes, and actually 1 million children of 7 pick their noses in public and don't think it's a problem. This is part of the thing I think for us as parents of children with disability, we think no other child does this. Lots of children do this. The idea is to not actually turn it into something that is the focus. So the child actually is innately rewarded by all of the attention that goes to this particular thing, which is so difficult when you turn around and your kid's got their finger up their nose and you say, oh my God, yeah, don't do it. But every mother feels that way. Every mother, every parent feels that way if they see that happening, you know. It's about understanding that what we're doing is over the years that we're building and teaching our children, it takes a long time to teach children time and place. And the other thing, by the way, this is a great thing you've reminded me about. You know when you're trying to teach people privacy, grown people privacy, for example, and you think, I don't know why they can't get it. You know, you can't take your genitals out when you're in the bus. You know, you can't touch. Well, you know, you boys, I've observed this stuff. You can't get your hands in your pants, but you can touch on top, and that'll be okay. Some people touch it a lot on top of their pants. Yeah, get your hands in your pocket, but you can't make those fingers move around a lot because people really worry about that. So we have to get less funny about all these like taboos in our society that people do. And you know, we have to understand how crazy we all are. When I went to China, people go like that and snot into the gutter. And if they saw you using a tissue, they would think you were the rudest person in the world. Because people there do not use tissues. It's a different world. So we think that we're in a world where this is a rule that actually, as a human being, will destroy your humanity. But actually, it's just a cultural norm. Just so happens this is his culture, and he is going to have to learn this. But it's going to take him a long time to do it. And so it's about giving him information. It's about not getting too inflamed in the process.
Please, if it was all just reduced down to what do humans do, it would not be a problem.
But it is a problem because culturally, as a grown person, if you're walking around picking your bottom, taking you out your genitals, or picking your nose, people will be repulsed. So we have to help our children. You've got so right to be focusing on this at this point. But I think you should just give yourself a little rest and not worry too much about the fact he's not taking it up straight away.
I'm just worried it's going to become a bad habit that he can't break, you know.
It is a
Because
bad
he does
habit.
it very, very frequently.
Yeah.
And he doesn't just pick it, he's got to eat it as well. So
Yeah.
it's doubly gross.
Well, only what other human beings do. And so it's just about teaching time and place in other ways. So if we're trying to teach people privacy, we have to give people privacy. If a person's got no privacy in their life, so if you're a person who comes to work, you go in the front door, you don't knock, you don't call out, you're touching people's whole private beings because you're doing, personal care with people. You can't avoid doing this. Of course, we have to do it. But this will make it harder for people to understand about time and place. When in their own lives, there are people touching their bodies in the most private places all the time. So we just need to understand that we have to build concepts with people. Concepts of safety in the car, concepts of privacy and time and place. And so really what I would do with him would be not say anything, just button your lip and then just gently take him up and put him in his room. That's all I do. No talk. Some other point, in whatever form of information he can get, I would give him some information about the fact that people in our culture don't pick their noses in public. But they do pick their noses, so let's not pretend that people don't. Let's just say people don't pick their noses in public or in front of other people. And you can put that up on a wall if you wanted to for him, but you never say those words over and over and over again. And just gently, really gently, take him to his room and close the door.
Could you also focus on saying, when you pick your nose, you need to use a tissue? Rather
It doesn't satisfy. I know that. Doesn't fix me.
Not a tissue thing. He always has tissues in his pockets, so he
The other thing is,
go with that excuse of no tissue.
the other thing, I've got a gene that is actually okay for drinking milk. And actually most Westerners should be drinking milk either, apparently, because it creates a lot of mucus. So, it's like trying to see the whole situation and not just get into the end result of it, just try and see it in a wider way. And I don't know, I wouldn't say this would be something that would be fixed, anytime soon, but it's great that you're working on it. It's just about but just take all the flame out of it, take all the attention away from it, and just,
That privacy thing too, and to pass on to your workers
Yeah.
as well, and how they deal with your people. I find
Yeah,
that
definitely.
difficult. Like I'm telling them to talk out loud if you're having to do toileting and be respectful, and offer them first, and talk if you. And it's sort of they feel uncomfortable, but it's like no, it's such
Even down to
important
things
thing for
like,
them to learn.
I'm going to take your shirt off now, are you ready?
Yeah.
Not such a big thing to do. Now, I think our time's finished, so thank you for that. I'm sorry it was so much.